Hi, I am Sarah Rosell. I am your son or daughter's chemistry teacher at Rochester. Up on the screen here, you can see my email in case you need to contact me. And you can also see a website where you can find this presentation at any time if you want to revisit it. Just a little about myself. This is my 16th year teaching at Rochester High School. And I have taught chemistry, block science, biology, physical science, botany, pathology, so kind of a little bit of everything. This year, I'm teaching chemistry, physical science, and AP chemistry. It's my third year teaching AP chemistry. So I also would like to just introduce some people that are important to me and my puppy as well. So on the left there, you see my dog Watson. He is our rescue dog. He's about 3 years old and he's super crazy. And then you also see my own children on their first day of school this year. Addison is going into fourth grade this year, and Everett is starting kindergarten. So it's really exciting times around our house. And then also, something else that's important to me is my history as a Spartan. I spent lots of years at Michigan State, have my bachelor's and my master's from there. I was very lucky to be placed at a really amazing school for my student teaching, and it's really helped me develop into the teacher that I am today. So things that you should know, my kind of like a quote that would define my belief about science is up on the screen here. I'm a real firm believer in not just teaching things for memorization, but teaching things for understanding and helping students reach true understanding of the content that we are addressing. And so it's less about memorization and more about putting all the pieces together to get a complete explanation or description. For our course, we align our course to the Michigan K-12 science standards, which are based on what we call the NGSS or Next Generation Science Standards, which are national standards. The list of topics is right there on your screen. You can also find this information on the syllabus at any time, which can be accessed using the link that's on this presentation, or you can access it in Parent View. One of the big things about our chemistry class this year is we are starting to use what we call standards-based grading. One of the great things about standards-based grading is students have more control of their grade than in a traditional grading scale. So how standards-based grading works, we won't really have tests. The only test they potentially would take would be an exam at the end of the semester. However, quizzes will be given, and they will be given approximately once per week. This is likely to start next week, if not the following week, depending on where we fall in our schedule. We might also do projects and lab reports that will be scored using a standards-based rubric, but for the most part, most of their grade is going to be based on these weekly quizzes. You can see an example of what could be covered in a biology quiz over on the right here. You can see that they are questions that are set up by standard. So this 3.1 tells you the standard number. And kind of like the content of the standard. And then each of these questions addresses the standard that's listed. When we grade these assessments, they are graded on a 4-point scale, and I'll talk more about that later. So each question is out of 4 points, and you get 1 score for each of these questions. The standards are always going to be assessed at least once, but they can be assessed multiple times throughout the semester, and we will give students a copy of the standards. All of our standards are written as I can statements, so students are able to be able to self-assess whether or not they are able to do these particular skills. So a lot of our assessment information is going to be skill-based as opposed to memorization-based, which ties back into the philosophy of making sure that we're teaching for understanding as opposed to rote memorization. Here is an example of the scoring scale that we're using. A 4 would be mastery. Basically, students would be able to teach somebody else whatever the content that's being assessed. That's traditionally an A, all the way down to a 1, which means students demonstrate some ability of reaching that content standard, which is traditionally a D grade. If a student earns a 0, that means they didn't complete it or they were completely off base and are not even on the right track towards achieving that standard. So what does this look like in student view or parent view? That's always the biggest question. So I took an example on your screen here of what it would look like. And so a couple things I want to point out. The first thing is the category. Students will still receive homework and I will still be checking it. But the difference is when they receive their homework and I check it, the homework does not actually count towards their grade. However, all homework must be turned in for students to be able to retake any quizzes or any of our formal assessments. These retake opportunities will be available in a couple of different ways, and I'll talk about that when I talk about the quizzes a little bit more. but they will not be able to retake any of their quizzes or their standards unless they've turned in all of their homework. So a couple things you also need to notice or should notice. You'll note that there are comments attached to every homework assignment that's turned in. Whether it is on time or late is kind of irrelevant. It's really, did they do it and did they turn it in? They earn the point, quote unquote, for turning it in, and you will receive a comment that is either on time or late. Late assignments are totally acceptable. If it becomes a habit, I would have a conversation with your student about what's going on, why assignments are typically turned in late, and then we would work to help change that moving forward. However, late assignments are totally fine, and you can still retake assessments if you have assignments that are late. You also might see zeros appear. Zeros would appear for students who have missing assignments or an assignment was incomplete when it was due. Another option, it might also say absent. If a student was absent, they would have a 0 and then it would say absent underneath it. These grades or these points and comments will change if they turn it in. It could change to a 1 with a late, or it could change to a 1 with an on time if it was an absent assignment and they turned it in upon their return. It doesn't matter from a points perspective, but if you see any zeros for homework, your student will not be eligible to take or retake any assessments or quizzes to improve their score. Additionally, we have a citizenship category. The importance of citizenship, again, does not count towards a grade. However, in order to retake any quizzes or assessments, they need to have an average of 4 on citizenship. Students receive 5 citizenship points each week, and the points will only decrease. And the way students will lose citizenship points is basically I tell them they have to be a respectful student. So things that could cause them to lose citizenship points would be if they're sleeping during class, if they're using technology in ways other than instructed, if they're engaging in any inappropriate behavior, if they're tardy or late to class, if they have their headphones in during class, all of those things could result in a loss of citizenship points. If your student does lose citizenship points, you should see a note appear as to why the citizenship point was lost and what day that occurred, just so you are aware of what exactly is happening. The most important part for their grade are the assessments. And this is where the grade comes from. So the maximum on any assessment is 4 points. Like I said before, remember mastery is displayed at a level of 4. So every score that you see show up is going to match 1 question and 1 standard on a particular quiz. So this particular one would just be 1 question from the quiz. If you look at the example that we showed earlier, it might be that first question. And quizzes can always be redone, or assessments can always be redone for a new score. But the assessments must be completed before school or after school. And remember that students must have all of their homework turned in and also have an average of 4 on their citizenship points in order to have the opportunity to retake assessments. One of the best things about this system is that when students come in to retake assessments, they don't necessarily have to retake the whole thing. They can retake individual questions and individual standards. So if a quiz had 3 questions on it and they got a 3 on one of the questions and they got 4s on the other questions, if they only want to redo this question they got a 3 on, they can choose to just redo that question. They don't have to redo all of them. So some retake opportunities will be very short, while others might be a little bit longer depending on how much they're going to retake. I'm available for retakes Tuesday after school and Wednesday before school. If these times will not work for your student, there are other arrangements that we can make in a one-on-one basis. It's just going to require some communication, and we'll find something that will work. And just a reminder, we also might be grading, or we will be grading labs and projects, and we will be completing those. There will be standards associated with those labs and projects. So we will also be using standards-based grading to grade those, but those will not be able to be redone simply because those are things that students work on over a period of time. They will have opportunity for teacher feedback as well as other student feedback, and they're things that they can work on outside of class using outside resources. So those would be the only things that contribute to their grade that would not be able to be redone once it has been graded. Here's kind of how the points break down. Because we're only using a 4-point scale, the percentages are slightly different than you might see in other classes. However, on student view, you should see these scores on the right-hand side showing up. And so that way it's easier for you to keep track of where your student falls. So a 2.0 is where a C falls. And then anything 1.14 is where a D falls. So you can see these values are a little bit different than your traditional percentage scales. What can you do to help your student? Help them learn to advocate for their education. We're kind of teaching them how to be what I refer to as real people, and move on outside of our wings. And so we need to help them learn how to speak up for themselves with our support, because eventually they're going to get to the point where they don't have our support. So we want to make sure that while we are here to support them, they are learning how to best advocate for themselves. Talk to them about lessons learned from their mistakes and things they consider to be failures. We always talk the talk and we say we always learn from our mistakes, but very few of us as adults are really good at walking the walk, and actually learning from our mistakes and being okay with that. Something I constantly am battling as well. But I also like to work with students on this because they consider anything below an A to be a failure in some instances, and in which case it's definitely not. It's just them learning how they need to improve moving forward. And then we give them the opportunity for improvement in our assessment retakes. They need to focus on their learning in addition to their grade. Grades are important. I am definitely not saying that they're not. They definitely are important, but the learning is really why we're here. And the development from the beginning to the end and their understanding of the material is more important than their grade. Use Google Classroom with them. You don't necessarily have access to log in, but you can have them log in and you can see what we're doing in class. It's updated each day with what we're working on in class. Things that your student can do: participate. We focus a lot on participation. There's a lot of discussion that happens in our class, and we really like kids to participate because it's okay to be wrong. That's how we learn. That goes back to that whole learning from our mistakes. Complete all assignments and utilize practice opportunities as provided. So making sure not only you have them turned in so you can retake your assessments, but also completing them to the best of your ability. So you are taking advantage of those low stakes opportunities to practice before the assessment occurs. Use a planner or some sort of calendar to keep up with due dates. A lot of them try to use their phones, but some of them have a hard time using their phones as a planner and would benefit from a hard copy planner. It's important that they are asking questions as they come up, not just at assessment time, because if it comes right before the assessment, oftentimes they're so far confused and they've studied the wrong stuff, and it just becomes a big issue. So it's really important that they're asking questions consistently. Check Google Classroom when you're absent or you need a refresher on what we did in class. Again, updated daily so that it's easy for them to keep up. It's helpful if they can review nightly, and this can just be a discussion with you about what we're doing in class. It doesn't have to be paper and pencil review, but just like having a discussion about what we've done and what we've learned and where we're going is helpful. They can always schedule a time to meet with me to talk about any problems they're having. I'd love to kind of have a few minute chat with them. Oftentimes we resolve any issues in like 5 minutes or less. And obviously using parent view or student view to keep up with progress in class, and making sure that the students are aware of their progress as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me and reach out to me. And thank you so much for allowing me to spend time with your teenager. Just a reminder, you can find this presentation at any time at the tiny URL on your screen. Thank you. I hope you all have a great night.
Hello, my name is Kristen Warholic, and I am Mrs. Rosell's student teacher this year. I'm from Oakland University. That's where I go to college, and I'm doing my internship year for student teaching at Rochester High School this year, which I'm very excited about. Mrs. Rosell and I are teaching chemistry and physical science together, so it should be a good year. I have a slide with some information about myself. In the upper right corner, you'll see just a picture of me without a mask on, because I feel like so often now I'm wearing a mask in front of the kids. This is the picture I showed them on the first day so that they knew what I looked like. In the bottom left, there's a picture of my family. My mom and dad have been together forever. They met in elementary school and have been dating or married ever since. And I have two older siblings. My older sister is 27 and she's married to an awesome guy. So I've got a brother in law as well. He's not in the photo, but he exists. And I also have an older brother in the photo. We're at his college graduation. He graduated from Michigan State University. My sister is a nurse and my brother is an engineer. So they're both very interesting people. In the center picture there, it's a picture of me with an elephant. I absolutely love animals and anything to do with nature, plants, animals. It's all right up my alley. So this is a picture of me with an elephant at the Toledo Zoo last year. And finally, in the bottom right corner, there's some cards. In my free time, I enjoy doing calligraphy, so those are some of the cards I've made over the past year as gifts for people or as like congratulations or thank you cards. So just a couple of my hobbies are calligraphy, drawing, things like that. I decided to become a teacher because when I was in high school, I had really fantastic teachers who not only taught me like content, like chemistry, Spanish, the classes that I was taking, but they just taught me how to be a good person who cares about people. And I thought that they were really influential and great people in my life. So I decided I wanted to make a difference in the lives of the high school students now, and that's why I'm a teacher. So I hope that this year I can get to know your children very well and become somebody who helps them figure out the content of chemistry or physical science, but also just figures out what life is all about and what kind of person they want to be and what they might want to do with their life. So thanks so much for getting to know me, and I hope we have a great year.